Millionaire hires a poor woman to pose as his fiancée at a family gathering, but the truth, she Revea. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The story begins on a rainy evening in New York City. The streets shimmered with reflections of neon signs, and the sound of taxi horns mixed with the soft drizzle falling on the pavement. Inside a small diner on the corner of 8th Avenue, a young woman named Emily sat by the window. Her coat was thin, her shoes were worn, and her tired hands gripped a notebook filled with sketches and half-written ideas. She was a woman who had been fighting to survive each day, juggling 2 part-time jobs, and still falling behind on rent. Emily was invisible to the busy world around her. Customers walked in and out of the diner without even glancing at her. Yet her eyes carried a quiet determination, a resilience that no one seemed to notice. She sipped slowly on a cup of coffee, the cheapest thing on the menu, stretching it out to last as long as possible because she had nowhere else to go that night. Across the city, in a penthouse suite high above 5th Avenue, a man stared at his reflection in the glass. His name was Alexander Harrington. He was a millionaire by inheritance, a man who carried the weight of generations on his shoulders. His family empire was built on finance and real estate, and with it came a suffocating list of expectations. His father demanded perfection. His mother demanded an image of stability. And now, they demanded he return home with a fiancée. Alexander despised the charade. He had no intention of marrying for convenience, yet the family gathering loomed, and without a partner on his arm, he would once again be humiliated in front of relatives who lived to judge. He needed a solution. He needed someone to play a role. That same night, fate crossed their paths. Alexander entered the diner, seeking a moment of anonymity away from his gilded cage. The smell of bacon and eggs on the griddle, the laughter of strangers, and the crackling of a jukebox were worlds away from his marble halls and private drivers. He noticed Emily sitting alone, her hair damp from the rain, her notebook shielding her from the world. Something about her simplicity, her solitude, pulled him in. He sat 2 tables away, ordered black coffee, and studied her discreetly. She did not notice him at first, too busy scribbling something in her notebook. But then the waitress came over and gently reminded Emily that her bill was overdue. Her face flushed with embarrassment as she fumbled with the few dollars she had left. Alexander watched as she whispered an apology, her voice soft, her dignity intact even as humiliation threatened to crush her. In that moment, Alexander saw what he had been missing his entire life: authenticity. A woman who fought every day, not for appearances, not for wealth, but simply to survive with her head held high. That was when the idea formed in his mind. As Emily gathered her things and prepared to leave the diner, Alexander approached her. His voice was calm, deliberate, and startling. "Excuse me," he said. "I have a proposition for you. It may sound strange, but hear me out." Emily froze, clutching her notebook tightly to her chest. She looked up at him, suspicious, wary of the stranger in a tailored suit who seemed out of place in the diner. Her instinct told her to walk away, but curiosity rooted her to the spot. Alexander continued, "I need someone to pose as my fiancée for a family gathering. It will be only for 1 week. I will provide compensation that can solve certain difficulties you might be facing." His gaze softened, acknowledging the struggle he had just witnessed. Emily blinked in disbelief. Was this some kind of cruel joke? Who would ever approach a poor woman like her with such an outrageous request? Yet the man's tone was steady, and his eyes revealed no mockery. Her heart raced. The offer was absurd, but the mention of financial compensation tugged at her reality. Rent was overdue, bills were piling up, and her landlord had already threatened eviction. Still, pride fought against temptation. She whispered, "Why me?" Alexander held her gaze for the first time, with unshakable conviction. "Because you are the first person I have met who has no reason to lie to me. And that is exactly what I need." The rain outside grew heavier, tapping against the diner window as if marking the moment that would change both their lives. And though Emily did not yet know it, the agreement she was about to consider would set in motion a storm of secrets, lies, and an unexpected truth that could either destroy them both or bind them together forever. Emily could hardly believe what she had just heard. A stranger in a tailored suit had offered her money to pretend to be his fiancé. The words replayed in her mind like an echo that refused to fade. She clutched her worn notebook tightly, her heart pounding as if it wanted to escape her chest. The rain outside pounded harder on the diner window, adding rhythm to her confusion. Why would a man like you ask a woman like me to do something so insane? She whispered. Her voice carried both fear and disbelief. Alexander did not flinch. His gaze was steady, calm, almost too composed for the bizarre proposition he had just delivered. Because I need someone who has nothing to gain from lying, someone who can stand by my side without an agenda. I believe that is you. Emily's instinct told her to run. She was a woman who had learned the hard way never to trust easy promises. Yet the reality of her life pressed heavily on her. The rent was overdue, bills stacked up on her kitchen counter. The threat of eviction hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. Her pride screamed no, but her survival whispered yes. Just think about it, Alexander said, sliding a crisp business card across the table. Meet me tomorrow morning at the Harrington Tower, 10th floor. We can discuss details. If you walk away after that, no harm is done. Before she could respond, he stood and left, leaving behind the scent of expensive cologne and the weight of an impossible choice. Emily stared at the card, the gold letters gleaming under the diner's fluorescent lights. Alexander Harrington, Harrington Enterprises. That night, Emily lay awake in her small apartment. The leaky radiator clanked. The ceiling paint peeled. She hugged her thin blanket close, trying to drown out the noise of her neighbors fighting down the hall. Her eyes drifted to the business card on her nightstand. One decision could change everything. But at what cost? The next morning, her hands trembled as she pushed open the glass doors of Harrington Tower. The lobby was marble and gold, a cathedral of wealth. Men and women in tailored suits moved briskly, their polished shoes clicking against the spotless floor. Emily felt small in her second-hand dress and scuffed shoes, but she forced herself to lift her chin. On the 10th floor, Alexander waited. His office overlooked the city skyline, glass walls framing the endless stretch of skyscrapers. He gestured for her to sit. Emily, thank you for coming. I want to be clear. This is not a game. My family expects me to bring a fiancé to our annual gathering this weekend. Without someone at my side, I will be mocked, pressured, and forced into arrangements I do not want. That is where you come in. Emily folded her arms, still skeptical. So, what exactly would you expect me to do? You will attend the gathering with me as my fiancé, Alexander explained. Smile, speak when spoken to, and endure a few days of my relative's company. In return, I will pay you an amount that will settle your debts and more. The bluntness of his words both startled and offended her. Do you think I can be bought so easily? She snapped. Alexander leaned forward, his tone firm but not unkind. I do not think that at all. But I saw you last night. You are strong. You have dignity, even when the world tries to strip it from you. That is exactly the woman I need. Not someone polished by society, not someone rehearsed. I need real. What? Her chest tightened. No one had ever described her that way before. For a moment, she almost forgot this was only a transaction. Still, hesitation lingered. What if his family discovered the truth? What if she failed and humiliated herself before people who had everything she never would? Alexander seemed to sense her fear. He reached into his desk and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside lay a simple diamond ring. This is just for show, he said. But once you put it on, they will believe you are mine. I will handle the rest. Emily stared at the ring, her reflection trembling in the sparkle of the stone. It was beautiful, far too beautiful for someone like her. The thought of slipping it onto her finger felt surreal, almost dangerous. Finally, she whispered, 1 week. Nothing more. Alexander nodded, a flicker of relief crossing his face. 1 week, that is all I ask. Oh. As Emily slid the ring onto her finger, the weight of it settled into her bones. She had no idea that what began as a contract would soon entangle her in a world of secrets, power, and emotions she could no longer control. The line between pretense and reality had just blurred, and neither of them could see the storm that waited on the horizon. The drive to the Harrington estate felt like entering another universe. Emily sat quietly in the back of a sleek black sedan, the diamond ring still heavy on her finger. Outside the tinted windows, the city's crowded streets gave way to sprawling countryside. By the time they reached the gated property, Emily's heart was thundering against her ribs. The gate swung open to reveal a mansion that looked more like a palace than a home. The driveway stretched endlessly, lined with carefully trimmed hedges and marble statues. Chandeliers glowed from the windows, even though the afternoon sun was still high. Emily's hands trembled in her lap. She had grown up in a one-bedroom apartment. This was a world she had only seen in magazines. Alexander, seated beside her, noticed her silence. "Remember," he said calmly, "you are not here to impress them. You are here with me. Hold your head high." The car stopped, and before Emily could steady her nerves, a butler opened her door. The Harrington family was waiting. Men in suits, women in designer gowns, cousins, uncles, and aunts stood on the grand staircase like royalty preparing to meet an outsider. Their eyes swept over her, cold and assessing, as though weighing her worth in a single glance. Emily forced a polite smile. The diamond ring glinted under the light as she slipped her arm into Alexander's. For a brief second, she felt the warmth of his hand tighten around hers, a silent reassurance. Dinner was the first test. The long dining table gleamed with crystal glasses, silver cutlery, and plates of food Emily could not even name. She sat beside Alexander, doing her best to mimic the posture of the others, but every move felt unnatural. "So," one of Alexander's cousins began, his tone dripping with false sweetness. "Tell us, Emily, where did you say you studied abroad?" Emily froze. The lie had not been discussed. Alexander spoke smoothly before she could answer. "She chose a more unconventional path," he said. "Education does not always come from ivory towers." His words deflected the question, but the smirk on his cousin's face told Emily that the suspicion had only deepened. Later, another relative leaned closer, whispering just loud enough for others to hear. "Those shoes look unique. Did you find them in a thrift store?" Laughter rippled across the table. Emily's cheeks burned. She wanted to vanish, to run back to the life she knew, no matter how hard it was. Before she could retreat into herself, Alexander reached under the table and gently took her hand. His voice rose with authority. "Enough. Emily has more grace in her silence than some of you have in your entire upbringing." The room fell quiet, stunned by his rare display of temper. Emily blinked in shock. For the first time, she realized he was not only protecting the image of a fake fiancé, he was protecting her. The evening dragged on, each moment a battlefield of glances and whispered judgments. At one point, Emily nearly spilled her drink, her hand trembling from nerves. Alexander caught the glass just in time, his steady grip saving her from embarrassment. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the charade felt less like a performance and more like a bond. When the dinner finally ended, Emily excused herself to the terrace, desperate for air. She leaned against the stone railing, gazing at the moonlit gardens. Her chest ached with the weight of the evening. She was not meant for this world. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "You held your own tonight." Alexander had followed her, his expression unreadable. Emily shook her head. "They hate me. I do not belong here. I am going to ruin this for you." Alexander stepped closer, his eyes intense. "Listen to me. You are stronger than you think. Every insult, every stare, you endured it with dignity. That is what matters. Do not let them decide your worth." His words struck something deep inside her. For years, Emily had been fighting alone, carrying her burdens without recognition. Now, someone was telling her she mattered, even in the face of ridicule. The sound of footsteps interrupted them. One of Alexander's aunts appeared on the terrace, her sharp gaze moving between them. "Alexander?" she said coldly. "A word in private." Emily's stomach twisted. She could sense the storm brewing. The family was not done testing her. As Alexander followed his aunt inside, Emily clutched the stone railing tighter. The night air was cool against her skin, but her thoughts burned. She was no longer certain this was just an act. Something was shifting between her and Alexander. and she feared it might be a dangerous line neither of them could control. The next morning came with a golden sunrise spilling across the vast Harrington estate. Emily woke in the guest room she had been assigned, its walls lined with oil paintings and heavy curtains that seemed to whisper of centuries of privilege. She sat up slowly, still feeling the sting of the previous night. Every sneer, every whispered insult replayed in her mind, like a cruel melody. Yet beneath that weight lingered the memory of Alexander's hand covering hers, his voice cutting through the family's scorn to shield her. She dressed carefully, choosing the simplest dress provided by the household staff. It was elegant, far beyond anything she had ever worn before, but she felt like an actress wearing a costume. With a deep breath, she descended the grand staircase where Alexander was already waiting. He stood tall, composed in a tailored suit, but his eyes softened when they found hers. "Good morning," he said quietly. "I hope you slept well." Emily managed a faint smile. "As well as one can in a palace." He chuckled, the sound rare and disarming. "Today will be easier. There is no formal dinner, only time with the family in smaller settings. Stay close to me." She nodded, grateful for his reassurance. Together they stepped into the garden, where a few relatives lingered among the rose bushes and marble fountains. The air was crisp, scented with freshly cut grass. For a brief moment, it almost felt peaceful. Later that day, while Alexander was called away to speak with his father, Emily wandered toward the stables. Horses neighed softly, and the scent of hay filled the air. She found solace in the quiet, away from judging eyes. As she reached out to stroke the muzzle of a chestnut horse, a voice startled her. "You are braver than you look." Emily turned to see Alexander's younger sister, Claire, watching her with curious eyes. Unlike the others, Claire's expression carried no malice, only intrigue. Emily offered a cautious smile. "Or perhaps I am just foolish." Claire laughed lightly. "Perhaps. But last night, when they mocked you, you did not break. That is more than most could manage." Oh, the unexpected kindness loosened something inside Emily. She found herself confessing, "It is difficult. Pretending to be someone I am not." Claire's gaze sharpened. "Then why do it?" Emily hesitated, realizing she could not reveal the truth. She settled on a half-truth. "Because sometimes survival means playing a role, even if the stage is hostile." Claire studied her for a long moment before nodding. "I see. Well, do not let them crush you. This family thrives on appearances, but not all of us believe in them." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Emily with a strange mix of relief and unease. That evening, Alexander found Emily sitting by the fireplace in the drawing room. A book lay unopened in her lap, her thoughts far away. "You have been quiet," he said, lowering himself into the chair across from her. "I met your sister today," Emily replied softly. "She was kind." A faint smile touched Alexander's lips. "Claire has a good heart. I am glad she saw you for who you are." Emily looked into the fire, her voice almost a whisper. "Who am I, Alexander? To them I am a fraud. To you I am a contract. And to myself, I am not even sure anymore." Alexander leaned forward, his eyes searching hers. "You are more than all of that. You are the only one in this house who dares to be real. That is why they fear you. That is why I need you here." The sincerity in his tone shook her. For a moment, the lines of the contract blurred, replaced by something raw and unspoken. Her chest tightened as if her heart was warning her to retreat, but her body betrayed her, leaning closer to the warmth of his presence. Before either could speak again, the heavy doors opened. Alexander's father strode in, his voice commanding the room. "Alexander." A word. His cold eyes flickered to Emily with disdain before returning to his son. Alexander straightened, masking his frustration. "Of course, father." He gave Emily one last look, a silent promise, before following the older man out. Left alone, Emily stared into the fire. The flames danced and crackled, their shadows flickering against the walls. She wrapped her arms around herself, torn between fear and the unfamiliar comfort she felt growing in Alexander's presence. What had started as survival was becoming something more dangerous, the stirring of hope. And hope, she knew, could be the most treacherous lie of all. The following day unfolded with an uneasy calm. Emily moved through the halls of the Harrington estate, with the weight of countless eyes pressing down on her. Whispers trailed behind her like shadows. Every smile she received felt calculated, every polite word coated with suspicion. After breakfast, Alexander was called into a private meeting with his father and uncles. Left alone, Emily wandered into the garden, hoping the fresh air would ease her nerves. The roses glistened with morning dew, but even beauty could not still the gnawing sense that she was being watched. She was right. Behind a column, two relatives spoke in hushed voices, unaware she had paused nearby. Something about her does not add up. Of course not. Alexander has never mentioned her before, and suddenly she is his perfect fiancée? I have already asked a private investigator to look into her. The words cut deep. Emily's stomach dropped, and her hands trembled as she gripped the hem of her dress. They were digging. Her truth, the life she fought so hard to keep hidden, was about to be dragged into the light. She retreated quickly before they could notice her. Back in her room, she shut the door and pressed her back against it, heart racing. This was a mistake. She should never have agreed to this arrangement. What would happen when they discovered she was just a waitress from a small diner, struggling to survive each day? Hours later, Alexander found her sitting on the edge of the bed, pale and silent. "What is wrong?" he asked, concern flickering across his face. Emily lifted her eyes, filled with fear. "They are investigating me. I heard them talking. They will find out everything. When they do, you will be ruined." For a moment, Alexander's jaw tightened, anger flashing in his eyes. But it was not directed at her. "They have no right. You are here because I brought you here. Let them dig. Let them whisper. I will deal with them." Emily shook her head. "You do not understand. They will not stop until they expose me. And when they do, you will see what I truly am. A fraud." Alexander crossed the room and knelt before her. His voice was steady, but his gaze burned with intensity. "You are not a fraud. You are the most honest person I have ever met. Yes, we began this as a contract, but do not think for a second that you are unworthy. If they try to humiliate you, they will answer to me." Her throat tightened with unspoken emotion. She wanted to believe him, but fear still coiled inside her. The Harrington family had power, resources, and influence. She had nothing but her dignity, and even that felt fragile in their hands. That evening, during a casual gathering in the grand salon, Emily could feel the stares intensify. Questions flew at her from every direction, each one sharpened like a blade meant to corner her. "Where exactly did you two meet? What does your family do? Why have we never heard of you before?" Emily stumbled over her answers, her pulse racing. Alexander stepped in smoothly each time, deflecting their questions with charm and authority. But Emily knew the walls were closing in. When the night finally ended, she slipped away to the terrace, staring at the dark horizon. The stars seemed distant, unreachable, as if mocking her place in this world. She whispered to herself, "This cannot last. Sooner or later, everything will fall apart." And deep down, she sensed that moment was already on its way, rushing toward her faster than she could prepare for. The storm Emily feared arrived sooner than she expected. 2 nights later, the Harrington family hosted a grand banquet in the estate's ballroom. Crystal chandeliers blazed overhead, violins played softly in the corner, and the polished marble floor gleamed under the feet of elegantly dressed guests. Emily stood beside Alexander, the diamond ring sparkling on her finger. But inside she felt like a fragile glass about to shatter. The evening began with formal introductions, toasts, and polite laughter. But beneath the glitter of wealth, tension hummed. Emily noticed several relatives exchanging looks, their whispers sharp as knives. Her unease grew with every passing moment. Then it happened. Near the center of the ballroom, Alexander's uncle cleared his throat and raised a glass. His smile was sharp, his voice carrying easily over the music. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we celebrate this so-called engagement, I believe it is only fair we know who exactly this young woman island." The room fell silent. Emily's chest tightened. She clutched Alexander's arm, but her legs felt rooted to the floor. The uncle continued, his words cruelly precise. "A background check has been completed, and it seems our dear Alexander's fiancée is not who she claims to be. She is no socialite, no woman of status. She works in a diner, a waitress struggling to pay rent." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The weight of judgment descended like a hammer. Eyes turned to Emily, some filled with shock, others with disdain. A few guests smirked, relishing the spectacle. Emily's face burned. Her throat closed. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, but the humiliation was crushing. The whispers echoed around her. "Did you hear that? A waitress? He brought her here to deceive us?" Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. With trembling hands, she pulled the diamond ring from her finger and set it firmly on the nearest table. Her voice, though soft, carried through the silence. "I never asked to be here. This was a mistake. I am sorry. Oh." Without another glance, she turned and walked out of the ballroom. The sound of her heels against the marble echoed louder than the violins, louder than the whispers. She pushed through the grand doors and into the cold night air, her lungs burning with every breath. Behind her, Alexander stood frozen. His eyes followed her retreating figure, fury boiling beneath his calm exterior. His uncle's smug expression was a knife twisting deeper. Emily reached the garden terrace and collapsed onto a stone bench, clutching her notebook against her chest as if it were a lifeline. For years she had lived invisibly, but never had she felt so exposed, so small, so utterly unworthy. The glittering world of wealth had chewed her up and spat her out, leaving only the raw truth of her reality. Back inside, the ballroom buzzed with cruel laughter and smug satisfaction, but Alexander's voice suddenly cut through the noise. "Enough!" His tone was sharp, commanding, laced with fury. All eyes snapped to him. But Emily did not hear it. She was already lost in the darkness of the garden, her heart breaking under the weight of secrets revealed. She believed it was over. The charade, the fragile connection she had begun to feel, all shattered in one brutal moment. What she did not know was that Alexander was not about to let her go. The truth had been revealed. But the battle was only beginning. Inside the ballroom, silence thickened after Emily's departure. Alexander's uncle stood taller, savoring the humiliation he believed he had orchestrated. Guests whispered and shifted, their eyes darting between the disgraced ring on the table and the man who had placed it there. Alexander's hands curled into fists at his sides. His voice cut across the room like steel. "You think you have exposed a lie, but all you have done is reveal your own cruelty." His uncle scoffed. "Cruelty? We are protecting this family from a fraud. She tricked you, Alexander. She tricked us all." "No," Alexander replied firmly, his gaze blazing. "The only deception here is the belief that wealth defines worth. Emily is more honest than anyone in this room. She did not manipulate me. I asked her to stand beside me, because I would rather have her truth than all of your polished lies." The crowd gasped, murmurs rising. His father's face tightened with anger, but Alexander continued, his voice rising with each word. "You want to strip me of my inheritance? Do it. You want to cut me off from this family? Go ahead. But understand this. I will not let you disgrace the woman I love." The declaration hung in the air, electric and undeniable. For a heartbeat, the ballroom froze. Even the music had stopped, the violinists clutching their bows midair. Alexander stepped forward and picked up the discarded ring from the table. He held it high, then closed his fist around it. "This was meant to be a symbol of a lie," he said, his voice carrying. "But tonight, I choose to make it real. Emily is not my contract. She is not my disguise. She is my choice, my only choice." Gasps filled the room again, but this time they were tinged with awe. A few relatives looked away in shame, while others glared in silent fury. His father rose from his seat, but Alexander did not falter. With steady steps, he left the ballroom, the ring clenched in his hand. The guests erupted into noise behind him, but he did not care. His only thought was of Emily, alone in the garden, believing she was unwanted. The doors closed behind him, and Alexander strode into the cool night air. The search had begun. He would find her, not as part of an arrangement, not as part of a game, but as the woman who had just become the truth of his life. Emily sat in the garden, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if she could hold together the pieces of her broken dignity. The cold night pressed in, and the soft rustle of leaves only amplified the silence inside her heart. She whispered to herself, "It is over. I should never have come here." Footsteps approached. She stiffened, ready to flee, but then Alexander's voice pierced the darkness. "Emily." She turned, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Why are you here? Go back inside, Alexander. They were right. I do not belong in your world. He shook his head and stepped closer, the diamond ring still clenched in his hand. No, Emily, they were wrong. Every one of them. I stood in that room and told them the truth. You are not my disguise. You are not a contract. You are the woman I love. Oh, her breath caught. The words seemed impossible, too fragile to be real. You cannot mean that. You barely know me. I know enough, he said firmly. I know that you face hardship with more grace than all their wealth combined. I know that your honesty is worth more than their polished facades. I know that when I look at you, I finally see someone real. And I would rather lose every dollar of my inheritance than lose you. Emily's chest ached, torn between disbelief and the desperate longing to believe him. But your family, let them judge, Alexander interrupted, his voice fierce with conviction. I do not need their approval. I need you. He dropped to one knee, the night air wrapping around them like a vow. He opened his hand and revealed the diamond ring. This time it did not feel like a symbol of pretense, but a declaration. Gasps echoed faintly from the terrace above. Several family members had followed, watching from the shadows. Even Alexander's mother, usually composed and distant, placed a trembling hand over her mouth. Emily looked down at him, her heart racing. If I say yes, it will not silence them. They will never stop reminding me of where I come from. Alexander's eyes did not waver. Then let them, because every reminder of your past is proof of your strength, and I will stand beside you through every word, every glance, every challenge. If they want to fight, they will have to fight both of us. Her vision blurred with tears. For so long she had been alone, unseen, dismissed as nothing. Now, for the first time, someone was choosing her openly, fiercely, without shame. Slowly, Emily extended her trembling hand. Alexander slipped the ring back onto her finger, but this time it was no performance. The weight of it no longer felt like a burden, but a promise. Applause erupted softly from the terrace. A few relatives turned away, unwilling to accept, but others could not deny the raw sincerity before their eyes. Even Claire, Alexander's sister, stepped forward with tears shining, whispering, "At last, the truth." In that moment, Emily realized the battle was not about wealth or appearances. It was about courage, and together, she and Alexander had just rewritten the rules of their story. The night air held its breath as Alexander rose from his knee, Emily's hand still in his. The diamond ring sparkled under the moonlight, no longer a symbol of pretense but of choice, of defiance, and of love. For a long moment, neither spoke. Their eyes did all the speaking, carrying the weight of every trial they had endured, and every truth now laid bare. From the terrace above, murmurs rippled through the family. Some relatives turned away in disgust, unwilling to accept what had just unfolded. Others, softer in their judgment, allowed themselves to see something they could not deny: sincerity. Among them, Alexander's mother stepped forward. Her eyes, usually cold, now glistened. She whispered just loud enough for the silence to catch her words. If this is what love looks like, perhaps it is time we all remember its worth. Emily's knees nearly buckled at those words, but Alexander tightened his grip. He turned to her with a steadiness that eased the trembling in her heart. You are not leaving, Emily. Not tonight, not ever. If they cannot accept us, then it is their loss. I will build a life with you, no matter where or how. All I ask is that you choose to stand with me. Tears spilled freely down her cheeks now, but her smile broke through them like sunlight after a storm. I do choose you, Alexander. I have been afraid of hope for so long, but with you it does not feel like a lie anymore. Ollie. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if the world itself might try to steal her away. The applause from the terrace grew louder, timid at first, then swelling as Claire clapped with determination. One by one, a few others joined, their walls of arrogance cracking under the undeniable force of authenticity. Alexander pressed his forehead to Emily's, his voice soft but certain. This is the beginning of something real. Oh. The garden seemed to glow around them, the night no longer heavy but alive with possibility. Emily closed her eyes, letting herself finally breathe, finally believe. For the first time in years, she was not running, not hiding. She was exactly where she was meant to be, beside the man who had chosen her, not in spite of her truth, but because of it. Their lips met in a kiss that silenced the last of the whispers. It was not the end of the story, but the start of a new chapter written not by wealth or status, but by two souls who had found each other in the most unlikely of bargains. And as the moonlight bathed them in silver, Emily realized that sometimes the greatest love stories are born not from perfection, but from imperfection, embraced with courage. This was no longer a contract. It was a promise. A promise of love, of justice, and of a future built together.